Hey folks, and welcome to Truck King. Today is an exciting day because we are taking a closer look at this. This is the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster, a brand new pickup truck that is launching here in North America. And in this video, we're going to crawl all over it, show you all the features, talk about the history of the company because they're pretty new to automotive. And then we're out here in the desert. Yes, we're going to be doing some desert rock crawling, so make sure you stay tuned. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts, let me go over a brief history of the company. So Ineos has been around for 25 years, and it started as a petrochemical company, essentially an energy company dealing with things like oil, gas, and propane, and that is still the largest part of their business. But in recent history, Ineos has diversified and gotten into a lot of different businesses, automotive, which we'll talk about, but then even sports. They're now a partial owner of the Manchester United Football Club, along with Mercedes F1. So yeah, they're really jumping into a lot of different markets. Now, the Grenadier came about when Land Rover decided to announce that the Defender was going away. A man by the name of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he started the company. He said, hey, Land Rover, I want to keep building the Defender. And Land Rover said, you can't do that. So Jim said, you know what? I'm going to make my own 4x4 off-road vehicle. And that's how the Grenadier was born. Now, the Grenadier is the SUV version. And then just a little bit after that launched, we got this, the Grenadier Quartermaster. And this truly is a global vehicle. You'll see right here, there's a little flag there, half Union Jack, half German flag. That's because Ineos is a British company, but this vehicle was mostly designed by Magna in Germany, and then it's actually built at a plant in Humbach, France. So yes, like I said, truly a worldwide vehicle, which is now coming here to North America. So that's just a little glimpse into the history. I encourage you to go look up Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos and learn more about it. And now let's talk more about this truck and what we're looking at here. Powering the Grenadier Quartermaster is a BMW-sourced twin-turbo inline-six. It makes 281 horsepower and 331 pound-feet of torque, sent through an 8-speed automatic ZF transmission. Now first, we can just talk styling here. And yes, there's no doubt it borrows a little bit from the last generation Defender. It has that boxy look, but it does have its own unique style. I love the shape of this hood and how it kind of fits in with these big square flat fenders out here. Then you're getting the round headlights with the pretty unique signature there, the LED signature in them. So it definitely looks different. And then when you go Quartermaster, yeah, you chop the back end off, put the bed on the back. I think this truck kind of looks sort of utilitarian, tough, ready to go off-road. I like the way it looks. Right from the first time I saw the Grenadier, I thought they nailed the styling. But why don't you chime in the comments? What do you think about the way this vehicle looks? Let me hit you with the important numbers now. Overall length here is 212.6 inches. Maximum vehicle height, 79.5 inches, while the wheelbase measures in at 127 inches. And yes, the wheelbase is slightly longer on the Quartermaster than it is on the Grenadier SUV. Now, the approach angle on this vehicle, 36.2 degrees, breakover angle at 26.2, and a departure angle at 22.6 degrees. Now there's three different ways to have your Grenadier. You can start with the base model and then essentially pick a la carte options, or then you have the Trial Master or the Field Master. Now the Trial Master is a little bit more about hardcore off-roading. Field Master is more about, comfort and just adding some nice features. So first of all, let me start up here. A set of BF Goodrich TA KO2s down here, a great all-terrain tire. This vehicle is also solid axles in the front and the rear, so no independent suspension. Now you're getting one really good skid plate up front and not a ton more skid plates underneath, but that is the most important one to have right up there. Now as we roll back here, Rear end, also solid axle. They borrow the suspension, the springs from Eibach, or they use Eibach springs here. And yes, it's a coilover setup. There are no leaf springs in this truck. Let's take a closer look at the bed here because it is definitely interesting. So the bed length is just over 5 feet. Not massive, but big enough to be competitive with all the other mid-sized trucks out there. Now, our truck here actually has this plastic drop-in bed liner. That is an option. You don't have to get that. A couple of the other unique features, you are getting D-rings, but just in the floor. I would have liked to have seen some tie-down sort of further up the bed walls like most of the other manufacturers do, but you do get 4 D-rings in the floor. And then the one obvious thing you can see, the spare tire. They mount the spare here in the bed. And again, this is an adventure vehicle. They wanted to make sure that spare tire was accessible. So it's in your bed, it's easy to grab. It does eat up a bit of space, but I do like the way they have it vertical in there because it's taking up the smallest amount of space possible. And then over here on the passenger side, you get this big dip right here cut out so you could have another spare, or just a nice little spot to actually hold on to your stuff. Now the other thing I noticed about this bed is that the wheel wells are quite a bit forward in the bed, which is just sort of an interesting design difference from what we normally see. Finally, these big sport bars, these are standard here on Quartermaster, so we don't have the tie downs, but you could use these to tie onto, and then there's a number of accessories that will also use these to attach to. Now finally, you're asking, well, what does it tow and how much can it haul? You do have a hitch receiver down here, definitely an interesting looking hitch receiver. Overall towing here is just a hair over 7,700 pounds. It's funny that it's not sort of a round number. The reason for that is because it tows 3,500 kilograms, which then converts to 7,716 pounds. And for the payload, I'm gonna go check the door jam sticker. On this truck, we're good to haul 1,418 pounds, which is a good number for a midsizer. And our adventure begins now, folks. So we're down here in Palm Springs, California. We're headed out into the desert right now to do some off-roading. But before that, I want to talk about how this thing handles on-road. So we're in the Quartermaster right now in the brand new pickup truck from Ineos. And there's a few things that really sort of define the driving experience here. First of all, twin solid axles, so front and back. Second of all is the steering. The steering is really not like you felt in most vehicles. The hallmark of the steering is A, it's heavy, but B, it doesn't really return to center nearly as quickly as what you're used to. And so on road, when you're going through a corner, yeah, you can't just kind of let go of the wheel and expect it to come right back. You actually have to put some pressure back into the wheel to get back to center. It's a little bit, I wouldn't even say annoying, it just takes a second to get used to, and it does require a little bit more of the driver than what you're used to, but yeah, once you kind of get it, it's not really a big deal. And the advantage of that, at least according to Ineos, and we're going to test it soon, is that off-road, when you're crashing through the rocks, you're not going to get any kickback through the steering wheel. It has that heavy planted sort of feeling, and because it's not always rushing to return to center, when you dial in a corner and then you're crawling up some rocks, it's going to want to stay on that line. So you can really tell just from the steering alone that yes, off-roading and being in gnarly situations really is what this vehicle was designed for. The on-road experience is important, but the off-road experience took precedent in a lot of the engineering decisions. So I mentioned the solid axles as well. In my head, I kind of keep wanting to compare it to a Wrangler or especially a Jeep Gladiator. And I'll say that word planted again. I think that describes this thing really well. It just wants to sit straight and drive in a straight line. It's not like a Wrangler in that I don't feel like I'm putting tons of input into the wheel to keep it going straight. Yeah, you just kind of set it and it locks into a straight line. So that planted feeling is definitely the best description of this thing when it's on road. Now I'll mention now the ergonomics and the sight lines a little bit. The windows and the whole greenhouse here is a little bit low. I'm not sure how much it comes across from this shot, but I'm sitting quite tall in this vehicle. To see straight out my driver's side window, I actually have to kind of duck down a little bit to be able to see those mountains over there in the distance. That's not something I'm really used to. Now I stand at 6'2", no problem with headroom, so it's not like I'm on the roof or anything, but yeah, the glass just all feels sort of down low. The advantage there, I think, are the sight lines down to the ground once again, so when you're off-road you can see everything. Also, Also, I love, again, kind of like a Wrangler, you have those big flat fenders, which are totally visible from my driving position. So I know exactly where my front corners are. Even on the passenger side, the little flat fender is a little bit extended outside of the hood shape, so I can see that corner really clearly. Another thing I did notice, which is kind of interesting with the glass, if you take your sun visor down and then bring it around here, it basically does absolutely nothing. It doesn't cover very much of the window at all. And again, that's just by virtue of the fact that, yeah, the glass feels like it's really down low. Now, other than that, the ergonomics feel fine. I fit in here fine. There's tons of adjustability here in my front seat. I can really push it quite a ways back. Steering wheel position feels okay. Plenty of leg room, nice dead pedal. So yeah, in terms of my fit, I feel good. I think my other complaint right away on the interior, though, is the lack of storage. There's not a lot of spots to just sort of toss stuff. I mean, I have my phone down here kind of wedged in next to the emergency brake because there's just not a little tray that naturally wants to hold it. Now, of course, you get a glove box, but it's quite a small glove box, and then you get a little center storage bin over here, but same thing, it's really not that deep or that big. So that's a little bit disappointing that there just isn't more spots in the interior to toss your stuff. And I think, again, there was a choice here, and the choice was Ineos went with this really industrial feeling interior. Everything is switches and knobs. We have these nice metal finished little bars sort of around a lot of the switches. They're just there to look cool, and it does look like nothing else on the market, and I do love the way it looks. Like I said, industrial, I think, is the best word you can use. Something that was designed for a purpose. And these days, of course, so many new vehicles are coming with, touch sensitive buttons and massive touch screens in favor of buttons and knobs. That's not what's going on here. And it was explained to me really simply. All the buttons and knobs down here in front of me are for comfort settings. All of the buttons up here above me are for off-road or for more utilitarian settings. So I do like that they've separated them. And yeah, if you want a different looking interior, well, this is definitely a good choice for you. All right, well, that's about it for the on-road experience. We are just turning up a more remote road, heading out into the desert. So from here on out, we're going to be talking off-roading. But before we do that, let me climb in the back seat and show you how much space is back there. So here's the back seat of the Quartermaster. I'll show you a few of the features. I'll pop this headrest out real quick so you can see. The seat folds, not quite flat, but it does fold forward. The neat thing is they actually have these straps up here in the wall, so if you were to put something in this little indent, you could strap it in. Not a ton of storage behind the seats, but that is kind of cool. I'll throw that back up there. For anyone wanting to put baby seats in their Quartermaster, there are 2 lower latch positions and 3 top tethers. And then another interesting thing that it does back here is the seat bottoms flip forward to reveal most of your electronics. Your battery, your entire fuse panel is over here. So that is pretty nice access. This is stuff that, normally you'd find under the hood, but Ineos decided to put it back here under your rear seat. And then finally, let me climb in. So you probably saw it there. I really have to duck down to get underneath here. But once I'm in, headroom is actually okay. It's obviously knee room that's not okay. Now, this is my driving position, so of course this seat could be pushed quite a bit more forward, but still, this gives you a sense for if you do have, a full-size adult up there. I stand at 6'2", an adult in the back seat, you're gonna be wishing you had a little bit more leg room. My knees don't feel too tall or anything. It's just the amount of space I have right in front of me. Now, a couple other features back here. We do have our own HVAC vents, and we have a USB-A and USB-C port right over there. So yeah, not a bad amount of features. I like that there's lots of headroom back here, but leg room leaves something to be desired. Easily the silliest feature on this car has to be right here. It's the toot button. This is specifically meant for cyclists, so it's not quite as loud as the regular horn, so you don't spook them. Listen to the difference. Versus toot toot. And now, folks, here we are off-road in the Quartermaster. So I think the first general point I want to make is the second we left the pavement and got into this environment, it's quite clear that almost all of the engineering choices that were made here, they were made for this. They were made for coming off-road. This thing is not about cruising down the interstate. It's about coming out here on an adventure. Not to say it doesn't drive okay on road. It's fine. But what I mean by that is, it leans through the corners on road. It's a little bit softly sprung underneath you. And then you get out here on this, rutted out, dirty, rocky desert road. And suddenly the suspension is doing such a nice job at taking care of us. It's certainly not a high-speed off-roader, but again, I kind of keep coming back to those two Jeeps, the Wrangler and the Gladiator. It feels very similar to those in so much that the suspension is soft enough that when you're out here bouncing over these rocks, it's not, chattering the teeth out of my head or anything like that. And then I talked about the steering. Yeah, it lends itself to sort of this confident feeling because it's so heavy and planted when you're out here off-road. And there's no kickback through the wheel at all. Less so than some other vehicles on the market. Now these days, with power steering the way it is, I don't feel much kickback in most off-road steering wheels, to be honest. But yeah, this one has even less than some of those other vehicles. And again, it's that confidence feeling. It's never doing anything you don't want it to do. It's not, wrestling the wheel out of your hands. The first proper obstacle that we got to was a big set of offset ruts. So we really got to see how the articulation works here and the lockers. So the Quartermaster has 3 lockers. There's a center diff lock, which is available in high, and then a rear and a front locker, but those are only available in low range. I do usually like to be able to lock especially just my rear end when I'm in high range, but that is not an option here. You have to go down into low, and then you can lock up all 3. And you can see here, first of all, the advantage of solid axles is you get that good articulation, but also when one wheel gets pushed up, the wheel on the other side gets pushed down into the ground to make sure that you maintain traction. And then with all 3 lockers on, this thing basically just slowly crept right through those ruts, and that's what the lockers are all about, right? Is giving you that ultimate traction because all 4 wheels are getting power all of the time. Now the operation of the lockers and even low range here, it's old school, man. The low range lever, you really get that satisfying clunk as you pull it down into low. The low range lever also operates your center diff lock, which is kind of interesting. So you can be in low center locked or unlocked, depending on whether you bring that thing to the left or the right. And then when it comes to the lockers, they're on the switches here up above, but even them, if you just hit that locker button sitting still, you usually either need to rock the vehicle or just roll forward at a super slow speed, and then you'll feel it engage. And I honestly think that's what Ineos was going for here. This is all about hardware. There's not a ton of software that's helping us do what we do. There is an off-road mode here, and I'll talk about that more in a second, but outside of that, it's all real hardware that's helping us off-road. It's not a bunch of computer nannies or anything like that. Now, when you do go into off-road mode, again, it's not really about, helping you off-road. What it does is it deactivates all of your parking sensors, your automatic emergency braking, all of those things you might want on-road. It gets rid of them all, including even the seatbelt chimes. This is not something I've ever heard any other brand do, but I love the idea because even off-road, you're constantly in and out of the vehicle, you're spotting someone else, you're spotting yourself, you're going to check something out. So if you're in off-road mode and you want to run with your seatbelt off at super slow speeds because you're jumping in and out all the time, you can do that as well. So it's an interesting decision, but I like it. And I especially like that all the parking sensors shut off. Other brands need to take note of this, that an off-road mode should turn off those parking sensors. You guys have probably seen videos here on the channel where we're out in trucks driving through long grass or, approaching a muddy ditch, and suddenly the truck slams on the brakes because we have all these automatic emergency braking systems and none of them shut off when you're in off-road mode. Off-road mode should tell the vehicle, hey, I don't want any of that stuff. So I really like the thought process that Ineos put in to their off-road mode. And then I'll also tell you about wading mode. The one interesting thing that wading mode does is it shuts off your cooling fan so that that fan isn't churning through the water and throwing water all over your engine compartment. Once again, not something I've ever heard any other brand do. And I think it shows the amount of thought that went into this vehicle, and the amount of thought that went into making it the ultimate adventure off-road vehicle, because those are kind of little things, but they really do make a pretty big difference. Speaking a little bit more on the power here, even in high range, I found it quite easy to modulate the power. Even though we're turbocharged, it's not too jerky. And then this probably goes without saying, but especially in low, yeah, you have really good throttle control on that pedal. So we were, creeping through a couple rocks and stuff, and it was no problem just to lay into the power just a little bit and get this thing crawling. So I do appreciate what I felt out of the power plant so far as well. Another thing that takes a moment to get used to, and it's unlike most vehicles on the market, is the fact that I don't have a speedometer or a screen right in front of me. Ineos uses the center screen here for all of my pertinent information. So here on the driver's side, I have speed, I have my gear, fuel, temperature, and I think part of this is making this vehicle easy to convert from left to right-hand drive, because then you don't have to take an entire, assembly and move it over. All you have to do is move this one little screen in front of me. It's not even a screen. Essentially, it's just little light up icons to let you know, hey, you're in off-road mode or you're locked up. So yeah, you have to move that little display. But other than that, this center screen holds most of your information. So once again, easy to convert from left to right-hand drive. And I think that's probably a priority for them. Coming from England, they want to make sure that, it's not a totally different experience. And frankly, it's not crazy expensive to build this vehicle in both left and right-hand drive. The other thing you have to get used to, these awesome safari windows above your head. Now, I keep looking up, and I mean, the sun is beating down on us. It is 91 degrees Fahrenheit right now. We're headed for a high north of 100. So first of all, when I first looked up, I thought, oh, that's not great that you have this little window above your head letting the sun in. But it's really heavily tinted, and I don't really feel the heat coming off of it. However, if you feel it with your hand, yeah, it's literally hot to the touch. So there's a lot of absorption going on up there with that tint. And obviously we're out here in the desert today, but most of these are not going to be running around in the heat of the desert all the time. I love these windows. It gives you a little bit more of that open air experience. You can pop the backs by themselves to kind of let the air vent out, or you can take them right out and almost sort of get a convertible feel out of it. So that's a fun thing that Ineos is doing that, once again, I haven't seen any other brand do. Land Rover had some safari windows up in their pillars at one point, especially in the rear, but never anything like this that I know of, sort of directly above the driver and the passenger. So you're probably getting this impression, but I think to sort of try and summarize the whole vehicle, it was built for this. It was built for off-roading. It was built for adventure. I think especially the overland crowd will probably appreciate this, because no, it's not a high-speed off-roading vehicle. It's meant for this, picking through the rocks. I should also say we're running BF Goodrich TAKO2s. That's what comes on all of these. A really great all-around tire, quiet on-road, and then really quite capable once you get off-road. But yeah, the overall feel of it is it's different. There's no doubt about that. If you're used to driving, Fords and Chevys and even Toyotas, this is not like those in the way that it feels, in the way the steering feels, and then of course in the entire interior layout, the switches, the buttons. And I think that's what's really going to draw you in or turn you off, frankly. A lot of people might not want to sort of learn some new controls and have something that looks and feels totally different from everything else out there on the North American market. And then on the flip side, I think for a lot of customers, that's exactly what's going to draw you in here. This is not like anything that's parked on your street, and therefore, it's cool. I think cool is the best word to describe it. The cool factor is here, and I think it's probably a lot cooler than a lot of other trucks out there. So yeah, if you want to stand out, if you want to have the coolest vehicle on your street that is quite capable because it's built with some serious hardware and off-road engineering, This Quartermaster is a pretty good choice. Well, folks, our adventure out here in the desert has come to an end. Now, I do have to answer one last big question. What does it cost? Well, here in the United States, the Quartermaster is going to start at just over $86,000, while back home in Canada, the Quartermaster is going to sell for north of $96,000. And this unit right here, which is the Quartermaster Fieldmaster as it sits, has an as-tested price of $109,000 US dollars. So like most pickup trucks these days, this thing is not going to be affordable. But what I can tell you confidently is that if you spend the money, you're getting a vehicle that was designed first and foremost for adventure and off-roading. And then that sort of aside, honestly, you're getting something totally unique on the market. There is nothing else out there like the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster, and that might be enough of a reason for you to run out and take a look. Well, folks, that is it for this one. Now, of course, I do want to hear your opinions. Let me know everything you think about the Quartermaster. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. As always, while you're down below, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then come right back here to Truck King to see what we're testing next. See ya.